Okay. Hello, everyone. We are officially live here on Zoom for our free forum that we've been doing. My name is Erik Lingvall. I'm joined here by Patrick Millsaps. Hello, Patrick. How are you?
How are you? Hello?
Hello, hello.
Did we say free? I thought.
We did, yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We're trying to give away some free information here. If you'd like, I can see if we can charge people later on.
No, that's okay. I'll give it a pass this time.
I'm really excited to have you here. We are connected actually through a really fun sort of, it's a fun connection in Cameron Watson. And so one of our students here, Vivian Watson, who is in the Babysitters Club, which was trending on Netflix, which I think is that's a big thing these days when you're trending on Netflix. And Vivian's mom, Cameron, who are going to be joining us actually next week, or excuse me, in 2 weeks for our virtual forum that's going to be a parent seminar. And they're going to be joining us for that, which is going to be very cool. And Cameron, when she told me about who you were, I was very fascinated by what you're doing. And then I just sent her a text and said, hey, you think this guy Patrick might be interested in having a conversation about the industry? And she got back to me that day and said, yes. I went, wow, okay, here we go. But she spoke so highly of you, and I know we had a chance to talk on the phone, and I really like, I like your whole vibe and your energy with this industry and just the way you look at it. And it's exciting to have people like you sort of leading the charge, I guess, if you will, in a way. And Cameron also mentioned something, and I thought this was interesting, that you were sort of semi-voted most likely to be governor when you got older. Everyone thought you would be governor. So you didn't end up being governor, Patrick, but you are now the CEO of what will be, from what I understand, the biggest studio in the world, Kane Studio, down in Albany, Georgia.
Yep.
I know you've worked as an attorney. You started off as a manager, as a talent manager. And also, I was reading this, that you were really very, very much a part of the industry getting catalyzed here in the early stages and getting things moving in the industry. And so, I mean, it seems like you've just done a little bit of everything in this business and now are sort of taking it to this next level. And Kane Studio, we'll get into more details of that. But man, everything I checked out, that's just such a cool concept, having the educational element, having all of these businesses that you're going to help grow. I'm just excited to learn all about that. And really today to learn about your perspective on where you think the industry is going to go, what you think is going to happen next. We were joking earlier, 5 years down the road, 1 year, 5 days from now, where you think the industry will be, because it seems to be different every week. So Patrick, yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you could just tell people a little bit about who you are, a little bit about Kane Studio, and we'll kind of go from there.
So after being a talent manager for a little bit, I had the opportunity of executive producing a independent film called I'll See You in My Dreams, starring Blythe Danner and Sam Elliott. I got real lucky. That film was fairly inexpensive. We were invited to premiere that at Sundance, and it went on international release, and so it was both financially and critically acclaimed. So out of the gate, I mean, most people hope their entire career to have either financial or critical acclaim. We did both in the same one. And then I saw what the return on investment was, and I said, wait a minute, something's wrong. And so that was really what started me kind of digging into the efficiencies of filmmaking. So Netflix was just then coming on strong. Amazon had just started. So distribution was just then kind of changing. But, being involved in indies where you don't have a lot of money to spend. I mean, we made a movie that looked a lot more expensive than what we spent. And so I wanted to see, now where did the rest of this money go? Where are the inefficiencies? And so I set out on a journey for several years in terms of looking at everything from film funds and how films were financed. And of course, as this was going, Netflix kept growing. And in fact, I had gotten in touch with the CEO of Overstock.com. His name was Patrick Byrne. And this was only when Netflix and Amazon Prime were really the only two players. And I called him and I said, look, do y'all have the space for a streaming service? Because I said, look, there's got to be more room for this. And he said, they looked at it, but they didn't believe that. They thought that there was only going to ever be two streaming services. So of course he keeps calling me back now that when they were 16 or 17. So I got to know some significant people in Hollywood, showrunners, people that Randy Runkle, who is the guy that basically greenlights everything for Showtime, Steve Bursch, who buys anything that Sony doesn't make itself. So for instance, he bought Paranormal Activity for Sony, and they've made over $1.5 billion on that $1 million purchase. So really good guys. I got to know some writers and showrunners, the guys that write pilots, and then, and I started just listening, because the one common denominator, there's a lot of common denominators between politics and show business, and that is everybody thinks they know everything, and so they want to talk a lot and they never listen. So I was asking a lot of questions. And so Kane Studio really is a culmination of really just asking a lot of questions for a lot of years. And what we have now is, and I describe Hollywood as the industry once was like Hoover Dam and Lake Mead. So Hoover Dam is what keeps Lake Mead full, and Netflix came, and so Hoover Dam was distribution. And so there was a bottleneck in getting content out to the world. And so Netflix came in and blew up Hoover Dam. And so it emptied out Lake Mead. And now Hollywood is still trying to fill that Lake Mead back up with a bucket brigade. And so they're never going to do, it's just, there's so much content to be made that they can't continue to do it the way they've been doing it for 100 years. And so that's where I started building out Kane and saying there's a better way of doing this. And Georgia certainly was the best place to do it, because we really do underutilize the tax credit. I mean, our studios, other than Tyler Perry, are really sound stages. There's no other infrastructure like Universal and Paramount and Sony out in California. And so we wanted to build an entire ecosystem, including housing, because housing is one of those big expenses that is very variable. So we could fix everything, and so we could present productions a complete package. And that's, and as well as train people in Georgia in not just, the physical production, but sound design and special effects, and the part of this industry that's really another art part. It's, because if I can find a couple of young sound designers, those are the people that there's Academy Award for sound design, but that takes an artist's touch. I mean, I think there's a documentary out there, or a YouTube something on the sound design of A Star Is Born, and if you don't have an appreciation of sound design, that will give you a greater appreciation of just of how sound design is. So we wanted to create a place that all those people could come together and not have to live in LA.
Yeah, I mean, it almost sounds like it almost sounds like Kane Studio can be this catalyst to grow. It almost feels like a garden. Metaphorically, I mean, you have this garden and you're planting all of these seeds. So instead of saying, We have to bring things in. We have to bring this in. We have to bring that in. We have to. You want to grow it from the ground up. Obviously, in addition to bringing in projects from elsewhere, right?
Well, our gimmick is we're actually going to have an 80-acre working farm in the middle of the studio, so it's actually there will be a garden there.
So there will literally.
So we actually are going to grow our own food on the studio. So that's a good analogy.
Well, yeah. I mean, I know that Georgia, the two biggest revenue generators are agriculture and the film industry. So you're kind of tying them both in one place.
We're giving our tip of the hat to our location. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, so that's very cool. Okay, so obviously we are in what I would like to call an interesting time. No one really knows what's happening. I know I was just talking to a friend of mine who is a talent manager out in LA, and his clients who are in pilots, who have booked pilots, it's like every week they just keep getting pushed back. And then sometimes they just don't hear anything. It's like literally people just don't even want to respond anymore because they don't know what to say.
Right.
From your perspective, which is obviously one very much in the midst of it, my first question for you is, what do you see happening in the near future, which I know obviously it's changing, but from your perspective over the course of the next, let's not even go 5-10 years. I mean, let's just say the next 3 months, 6 months, and then maybe the next year.
So right now on one of the major studios, I can't say which one in Atlanta, one of the major production companies is building out right now for a tentpole movie. They're doing all the pre-production. A friend of mine just got certified as a COVID prevention specialist, which is a made-up title because they're making this up as it goes along. But there's a 22-page document that the unions in LA kind of cleared. And I've read it, and it sounds like you're kind of faking it till you make it. And then Tyler Perry has spent like another $20 million to build housing on his site. So right now, everybody's just trying to figure out how to kind of get through this. That big movie that I was telling you about, they intend to start principal photography after Labor Day. My only concern is that I don't think they ran these protocols by any actors, because whether you're a method actor or just the simple focus of getting in character and trying to find where you are before you do your scene, that's going to be pretty hard to do with all this extra stuff that they've put on the scene. So, I do think that some of these mega A-listers might start filming for 2 or 3 days and say, okay, just penalize me and call me when there's a vaccine. Now, that's the bad news, is that LA is keeps starting and stopping. New York is starting and stopping. Georgia, we got the most kind of lenient kind of COVID rules, but with the unions coming in, and everybody wants to be safe. Now that's the bad news. The good news is that the demand, even though that those pilots are getting pushed back, and think about what you've got. You have big films that their productions were shut down during COVID. You have film and television that were already in the pipeline. So let's say they were already scheduled for this fall. And then you have 3 or 4 new streamers coming online right now. That is creating a backlog that there's going to be an opportunity post-vaccine, which I hear could be by the end of the year, that there's going to be so much content to be made that if you're where you need to be in terms of your skill set and you make yourself available, there is going to be opportunity post-COVID. It's just kind of the people in this industry don't tend to be patient, and sometimes you just got to say, we got to suck it up and wait another 30, 60, 90 days. I understand that's hard to do because sometimes for a lot of people, this is 100% how they make money. I get that. But because this is a communal exercise, creating content is a communal exercise. There is no way to socially distance making TV shows and movies. That I just think that you're not going to see the backlog open, the floodgates open until that vaccine is there.
But it kind of sounds like, and I think this is probably the optimistic point of view of a lot of people in the industry, is that when it does open, it's going to be just...
It's going to be years. It is going to be years worth of content to catch up, just to catch up. I mean, because remember, you've got all these movies that are partially filmed, right? I mean, remember the list I just went through. I mean, you know, we're not even talking about new content yet. We're you know, stuff in development, which is obviously slowed down. We're talking about things that are already being green light funded, ready to go. You know, you've still got network TV. You've still got a demand for episodics. I mean, so I just think again, it's going to be, you know, days have started to feel like weeks, and nobody knows exactly what month it is. But the opportunities post COVID are going to be, it is going to be a flood for a long time.
Yeah, and so when you say post COVID, I mean, I'm sure that's such an interesting post COVID. When you're thinking of that, what do you mean by when you're saying?
I'm talking about having a real life therapeutic or vaccine so that people, you know, feel safe, that they're not going to be a super spreader. I mean, so Albany. I'm going to chase a rabbit for a second, but I tend to do that. Albany kept showing up on the top 20 lists of per capita COVID cases in the world, but that was a little bit misconstrued, because we had 2 funerals at the same funeral home in 2 weekends, and so this was right when it started, and so those 2 where people flew in and whatever, and so those were called super spreader events, right? And so most of those that got COVID came from those super spreader events. You don't want your production to be a super spreader event, right? And so there's going to have to be, like I said, either a treatment or a vaccine. And I heard yesterday that both Oxford and I think Emory are you know, in stage 2 or 3 trials. So, you know, I think that's going to bring us back to what we're used to in terms of lights, camera, action.
So then, in regards to that, and of course, you know, being here in Atlanta and having a TV film training studio that is relying on, I don't want to say relying on the industry here, but it's a huge part of what we do with audition taping and just keeping that energy going. Where do you see then our state and also Kane Studio in regards to that? I mean, obviously on a national level, things will open up, but correct me if I'm wrong, it almost feels like Georgia will be the best place because of the fact that it's a little more open right now and things are going to be able to get rolling sooner. And obviously you have so many things, so many projects and locations that are in need of films and various projects to shoot at, right? I mean, like other sound studios, so on and so forth.
Not only that, is that with all these conglomerations and mergers, Disney, and I don't mean to get in the weeds here, but with Disney acquiring Fox, with AT&T acquiring Warner Brothers, with CBS and Viacom merging, which includes Paramount and what used to be Miramax and some of the like, and the amount of content, the bottom line is going to really matter. I mean, the days of, you know, let's just put the days of spending $650 million on Justice League and having it bomb are not going to be there anymore. Because the money's not there to do that. So there will be tent poles, but you know, and medium sized stuff. But there's going to be a lot of people looking at the bottom line in Georgia. obviously gives the greatest bottom line, greatest margins. And then I took that further by building this outside of a metro area, so my land costs are lower, so I can create even more margin. So my business pitch is, whatever you spend on that, I can save you another 25%. Georgia is crucial, and that's why that's what I'm doing. What I'm doing is that what Georgia needs to do is start getting into this other interstitial tissue of filmmaking where all the post doesn't go back to LA, because there is tax credits for that. I mean, we're actually going to build the first stage in Georgia where an entire orchestra can record a score, and that doesn't exist and yet. So, and then I think we've got the deal on. I don't know if anybody saw The Mandalorian, but that was all filmed on a brand new kind of stage. I've got some of the guys that helped develop that. We're bringing virtual stages here, so those will be next gen, and that's bringing in gaming programmers into the film industry. So you see the opportunities for people of all interests for this thing is great.
I think that's a really interesting point you brought up too, in regards to just cost of land, right? I mean, if somebody builds a studio really almost anywhere in California, it's going to be challenging if you're building. There aren't many Albany, Georgia areas in California where you could build even, right?
So we're going to start with 3,000 acres. Warner Brothers is landlocked at around 400 acres in LA. Wow. And Warner Brothers leases out 90% of their stages to third parties because they can fill their stuff cheaper elsewhere.
Wow. So really then, I got to tell you, Patrick, I feel you have me feeling kind of good about things. I don't think people have felt, I'm an optimistic guy, but it has been, of course, challenging. This is actually going to lead me to another question I have for you. But when we look at this, right, you look at what you're talking about in regards to being able to have this space at a lower cost, the tax incentives, more incentives for projects that aren't ridiculously expensive. So obviously some of these smaller projects more likely to get greenlit. Not only that, they're going to cost less, so they're going to be able to get more bang for their buck. Obviously another element too is you can fly into, this was what I was noticing even with Albany. There's a lot of different places you could fly into. I mean, I don't know if everyone realizes, but Hartsfield-Jackson, that's the busiest airport in the world. So not only do you have so many flights that will be able to come into there, but then also there are various places close to Albany where people could fly into as well. Well,
Delta flies to Albany 4 times a day pre-COVID. And we are actually already negotiating with Delta to increase those flights, add some better equipment, and then once we go full throttle, believe it or not, do a direct LAX Albany flight once a week, kind of like when you go on vacation and they do that to islands and things.
Right.
So we knew that. I mean, that was the biggest question dealing with studios. I think I started kind of pitching this to studios last October, and that was the biggest question from the on the ground production people, right?
Right.
And so that's where we started working with Delta. We are going to have a massive logistics function here. And then we'll also be, training local crew and everything else. But of course, my favorite thing to do is tell my friends in the unions and things in like California, and these are people that have a lot of experience and this, that, and the other, is that, that they'll pay $1,500 a month in LA and be living in a closet. And down here for $1,500 a month, you can buy acreage. And you know, so I mean, it's like, hey, there's a quality of life here, and we don't have earthquakes, so you know, it's
Well, and
yeah.
that is the thing. I think a lot of people, they don't realize how many, a lot of people think of Atlanta, and obviously it does get hot here, but the climate here is so great for filming. There's so many good things. Yeah, I mean, it almost seems like a no-brainer. I love the way when you say, I was talking to the guy from Overstock, and then I've been talking to Delta. I feel like you talk to a lot of people who are in these sort of bigger places, and it's something that I'm very intrigued by you. You have a very calm nature to you for being someone who is in what could seemingly be a stressful position. I'm curious about this. How do you encourage creative thinking within your organization? You know, so it's not coming from this sort of place of, we've got to figure it out. I mean, you talked about patience. I mean, what are some of the things from your perspective that, how you might encourage that?
Well, I've made a lot of mistakes, and expensive mistakes. And most of the mistakes I've made over the last few years was thinking that I needed to include someone from LA in the plans that I was making. And the problem with that was they were so stuck in LA ways that they couldn't think out of the box, because I mean, again, I knew there was opportunity in this business, because when I kept asking questions and they kept saying that's the way it's always been done, that's always been my sign there's an opportunity there. So when we started doing it with Kane, we literally started with a blank slate, and it's funny. I would reach out to experts. Like Mike Judge is a friend of mine who created Beavis and Butthead.
Yeah, I love him. Office Space is one of my all-time favorite movies.
And then I know a couple of other writers that one was a writer on Blacklist, and that guy created Carnival for HBO. So I emailed a bunch of writers. I said, okay, what y'all described for me your perfect writer's room, which is a big deal on like a TV show, because they're in it all the time. Now I'm going to save that email chain, getting a bunch of writers to explain to me what they want as a perfect writing room. I mean, it's long. I mean, so and then I'm bringing in the best people at what they do, and it's about half industry people with industry experience, and half just straight up business people. I brought in the Carter developments out of Atlanta. They've done billion-dollar developments. They've never developed a studio, but they're a nationwide respected developer. My studio operator just retired from running another studio in Atlanta for 20 years, so he's a trusted commodity. But then, one of the people that's coming on is an expert in government incentives, because that is so important to our educational model, and maximizing what's out there for that. So, every time, look, I'm surrounding myself with people a lot smarter than me. And I told them that when this is done, I'm going to be the only CEO in America with the lock on the outside of the door. And I'm like, y'all just unlock, y'all let me know when you need me. But, otherwise, I'm just going to let y'all run it, and I'll just sit and look at the cows.
Yeah, I love that. And, I love what you said earlier about the way things are. I think that is a big difference with this state in particular, even the community here in Georgia. And I had somebody said that one time, where someone said to him, well, that's just the way things are in the industry. And he said, well, no, that's the way things were. And I love that concept, Speaking of that,
I did look. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say the day of the diva in this business is over. I mean, that ended in the 90s. So the people that are jerks, and that is at any level of production or whatever. First of all, we have a no jerk policy. I don't care who you are. If you're not a team player and supportive of people, but especially, and I saw this early, happy sets make successful product content. And because if everybody's on set that's happy, when they promote it, they're happy that you can see it, they're happy about it. And generally you'll see those people working together again and again and again because they have such a positive experience. Like for instance, I whether it's stupid or not, I will go see anything that The Rock and Kevin Hart are in just because they are so fun together on their promo stuff, right? And I know people that aren't A-listers, but they're character actors that work all the time simply because they are a pleasure to be around.
Yeah. I think that's so. Yeah, and, we talk a lot about that with Catapult, with likability. A lot of times with kids getting into this business, we explain it's not just about what you're doing in front of the camera; it's what you're doing in the room. And are you the kind of kid who's a likable kid, who's going to have fun, who's going to enjoy the process, as we like to say, not just the product at the end? And that's such an important part. Speaking of that, in regards to education, obviously this is an important component of what you're doing. Yeah. So can you get into a little more of the specifics with the education element of what you foresee?
Yeah. So,
and just so people know what we're talking about literally having an educational, because I'm sure some people that they saw that you're the CEO of a movie studio, but this is much more than that. So if we can explain.
Yeah. So Dougherty County, Georgia is 75% minority and 1/3 of the population live below the poverty line. I was very active in Boys and Girls Club back in the day, and I learned that if I got to kids in high school, it was too late. And a lot of times these kids with a lot of ambition were going home to undereducated or underemployed parents and who didn't know how to support their kids. And so with so many jobs and available on this lot that we're going to need, whether it's through vendors or through us, I said, look, I want to create this great studio, and I also want to end generational poverty, little things. So the second person I brought on was a friend of mine named Irene Munn. She was the deputy chief of staff to Casey Cagle, but was also his educational policy advisor. And so I said, look, Irene, I don't have time to deal with all the bureaucracy, but I want to be able to start in 6th grade with girls, particularly 6th grade and do some sort of summer camp thing so that we're wrapping STEM education with the magic of showbiz. But then we've already made a partnership with, there's a high school right across the street from us that is a kind of a non-traditional path. I mean, these kids over there are making robots that are competing with MIT. So these are non-college track kids. It's more of a technical college track. Mm-hmm. And then we're talking to the governor about getting the Georgia Film Academy down there. Mm-hmm. I've also talked to IATSE, to IA, the local 479, to put their own training down there, so that we will have, and then Georgia, University of Georgia has just started a college curriculum, and also a college curriculum for film, a Master's of Fine Arts. But we're also an hour and a half due north of FSU, which has a very renowned film school. So we want to be, look, I'm following the NFL and the NBA model of the farm team, right? I want to find the kids that are good at whatever it is when they're young, and then make sure that I can, we can shepherd them all the way to the point that they have a full-time job on our property, and we have an ability to hire full-time entire families, train in, because again, if you take according to the stats of the Georgia Film Academy, you can, if you go through that program, you can take somebody who's making hourly wages, and when they get certificated for that, they're making about $90,000 a year. Now that's a middle. I mean, that's a number that doesn't exist down here. And what we have down here is fourth generation farmers that may be losing their farm. We have military, Marines, and Army that are at the end of their tour duty. So we have people that are good with their hands and are problem solvers. And let me just tell you, if and a lot of people have agreed with me, I mean, that is what movie making is. It's problem solving. You know, you got to be able to roll with the punches. So so we want to have. We've dedicated 500,000 square feet of building and 2 sound stages just for training. That will be available to. Again, we're going to bring in a headmaster or whatever to do it, but we, like I said, I brought in an expert on education who knows how to deal with all. I mean, you're dealing with the Board of Regents, the technical colleges, the local. I mean, that was a full-time job in and of itself.
So let me ask you this. So obviously you're doing what you need to do to advance the industry here. What do you think we can do, people outside of, let's say, Kane Studio, what can people do to help advance the industry here in regards to whether they're in front of the camera, behind the camera? What do you think are some things that we can do as a collective to continue, I guess, this momentum? And when it sounds like the floodgates do open, what are things we can do to just keep that advancement going?
One of the things is, I mean, when I was in politics, my first rule of politics was get other people to fight your battles for you. And right now, in terms of the tax credit and things like that, every year somebody comes up ill-informed and says, oh, we need to do away with this, do away with that. And the problem is the only people that know really the benefits of this business to Georgia are the people that are in the business. They don't, you know, there's not, if you're not in Sonoya, which The Walking Dead just changed from a spot on the map to a cottage town, right? If you're not that, then you really don't understand the long-term impact to everybody. I mean, in every business that can be impacted to this. So a lot of it is especially for parents and that are people that are involved in Rotary, Kiwanis, churches, and other things, is to get their friends and neighbors excited about this is not something, this is not California. I mean, we refer to Hollywood as the industry just because of tradition, right? But we're not, we're a couple of years away from not needing Hollywood at all, right? There was
wow. Is that something that you think we're at that?
If we get the biggest problem with Georgia is that we're not a big venture capital state. We're not a big kind of equity state, and so I have rolled in a production fund into my real estate deal. That was what I wanted to do, was to create a business venture that institutional investors would understand without me having to explain to them the fine art of Hollywood accounting. Dan Cathy at Pinewood, they have started a smaller fund. And so the two things that need to happen here is there's got to be somebody that is willing to say, I'm going to fund Georgia projects and then green light some Georgia written projects. Because then that's having a Georgia written project. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, we'll establish directors and things like that, but those are the two things: money and giving some of our screenwriters the chance to put something on screen. Mm-hmm. And candidly, that's why, I will be able to afford to do that, because if I've got a stage that's not being used, Um, and, I can make it a student project. I can make a student project film or whatever. So there's a lot of ways to do that. You just follow the USC model.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's exciting. I mean, that for me, I think has always been an element, right? Because there's this sort of sense of we're being used in a way, right? It's like,
yeah, right. Yeah, no question.
Yeah, I mean, Georgia's sort of being used. Yeah, you can come here, you can shoot on the cheap. We're gonna hire as many people as we have to. It will boost your economy, but then this concept of, I guess, being self-sufficient within the industry. I mean, that to me, you can say that I'm being biased or optimistic or whatever it is, but it just makes sense to me. And then even thinking about what you said, as far as you have to pay so much less for the grounds that you can obviously, you can offset these other costs. That to me is something I don't even know if a lot of people have really thought about that. And then this concept, this is what I find really interesting too, Patrick. You've touched on this a lot, and it's almost got this philanthropic element to it, in that much of what you've been speaking about, as Simon Sinek would say, like your why, starting with your why. I think that's such an interesting thing for you. What is it like? Why are you so passionate about this? And what are some of the whys underneath, obviously, just growing the film industry here for you?
Well, they say if you find something, if you do what you love as a career, you'll never work a day in your life.
Right, yeah.
So I was a lawyer for 15 years, and I was a pretty good lawyer, but I hated every minute of it. So, and boy, did I disappoint my parents. You know how most people say they're going to be an actor, and then your parents say, well, you need something to fall back on, like a lawyer, doctor. Well, I started being as a lawyer, and then I fell back on show business. So again, my in-laws, I mean, people thought I was crazy. So the passion was initially that I knew in my gut that there was a better way of doing it. And there was a huge opportunity to do it better. Now, the moment that I thought that, I didn't know exactly how, right? It was just that, candidly, I was like, if these idiots can do it, then there's a better way of doing it. I mean, I didn't know everything, but in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. So then I started looking at, and again, I have made a lot of mistakes to get here. So I guess the lesson there is, your mistakes are don't look at your mistakes as failures. They're just, you get back on the horse and learn from it, and don't make the same mistake twice. In fact, I tell everybody that I say I can guarantee you two things. I am going to make 1,000 mistakes. As long as you work with me, I'm going to make 1,000 mistakes. But the second guarantee is I'll never make the same mistake twice. But then it was kind of funny when I started looking at the economics of this, right? Where it made sense to build what I wanted to do down here. And I needed crew. Local crew, and this place needed jobs. So it was, when I tell people, because it's in our pitch deck, the education and stuff, I said, guys, this is not my reaction to recent events. This is not like, like everybody's trying to do something this year or whatever. This has been going on for 2 or 3 years. And I said, the altruistic part of it is part of our business plan. It's inextricably linked from our numbers. I mean, it is no different than we're building 22 stages, right? That are 50 feet tall. I mean, that they are, so they, there's a way of doing well by doing good. And this was one of the situations where we found that we could do it. And I think I'm going to be sure, well, I'm not going to, but we're going to bring in a documentarian and some other people to make sure that we tell the stories of people that don't have a showbiz background, that we train, and how it impacts their life, so we can share those stories with other people. Because that's one thing that Georgia is horrible at. We've had thousands of people go through the Georgia Film Academy. We've had incredible success stories from actors that are local, and I think the failure of Georgia as a state is to tell those stories, because, as we know, that's how the best way to, stories are what we do. And it's very persuasive to the people that aren't in this industry to tell a couple of 2-minute stories about how this changes people's lives.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing, or an interesting perspective on it, in that, it's like you said before, when I asked you about the advancement, just even talking about the industry, right? And I think maybe more people becoming aware of it. So in regards to the media, or I don't know, yeah, it almost seems like there needs to be a fair, or obviously that's probably not going to happen anytime soon, but just ways of getting the word out there to people where they are learning more. I mean, so many people don't even understand what the tax credits are. You have this industry that these tax credits help create this massive industry, and no one even really gets it. I mean, people understand agriculture, right? I mean, it's the climate, it makes sense. But it's like, but when it comes down to that, and I find that so fascinating, even what you said about the Georgia Film Academy, just the fact that there is this film academy, most people don't even understand the way it works and how it works in conjunction with these different colleges, so on and so forth. As far as the challenges, what would you say are the biggest challenges that are going to be facing leaders in particular? Because I really just admire the way that I just you're dealing with this situation and moving forward. What do you think are going to be the biggest challenges that we as leaders, and I probably selfishly am asking, and then in addition to that, how we can deal with those challenges?
The first thing is, you've got to just understand that you cannot take no for an answer. You can't remember, the folks in Hollywood, in this industry, have a vested interest in keeping it there. So, if you talk to somebody there and you talk about Georgia, they're going to say, oh, that's never going to happen. I mean, Warner Brothers flat out told me, you're never going to do post-production. And now I've got 3 post-productions vendors bidding on that. And I'm going to have 3 virtual stages, not 1. So I'll be better. I'll have more virtual stages than Disney. So there. So first you get in the mindset of do your homework, be well prepared, be well educated, have your plan, and then stick to your guns. Because, I mean, look, there's a lot of naysayers, even within this business. And a lot of the older folks are very protective of status and turf and all of that. And you just can't be that. I mean, this is, again, it's so funny that I find it funny that in a business that you literally cannot do yourself, you cannot do this. There is no component of this business that you can do by yourself. The fact that I still find people that try to screw people in it is just, it is mind-boggling to me, because it is, the fact that I mentioned these names is that simply because, if I said I was going to do something, I did it. And I tell my kids this all the time. I said, celebrities like being treated like normal people, and normal people like being treated like celebrities. And that's kind of how we, that's kind of how I've made a lot of relationships. I mean, I'm always the person, when I've been invited to set, I'm the guy talking to the teamster next to the truck, or the grip, or the, just the security guard. You have no idea how much information I've gotten from talking to security guards.
I bet. Yeah, right. Nobody even
'Cause they
realizes.
see everybody come in and out, and they hear everybody griping, and so I got to know I know probably more security guards on the big studios than anybody else.
Let me ask you this, Patrick. Here's an interesting question. Who are some of your role models? Who are some people that you look up to, that you admire?
My dad, who was an entrepreneur, um, he's now dead, but Otis Brumby, who was the publisher of the Mary Daily Journal, who was tough as nails, who taught me how to be tough as nails. Johnny Isaacson, who retired from the U.S. Senate, he was the last kind of before politics became so tribal, where it's just so us and them. Johnny was a statesman, or is a statesman. In this business, I'll tell you who I respect. I mean, we're pretty much the same age. I don't know if I could call him a role model. I wouldn't tell him that, but I have a lot of respect for Chris Pratt. He's a buddy, and then I don't think there's a better director out there than Clint Eastwood. I've never met Clint, but I've watched him direct, and boy, he can get the job done.
Yeah,
So,
we've had quite a few of our clients who have worked with Clint, and every one of them just says it's he's got this calmness to him, and actually, you sometimes don't know when he's started.
oh no, that's exactly. He doesn't say action. In fact,
Yeah. So I had a young
client.
client who's a kid, who's,
Yeah.
if she knew who Clint Eastwood was, but
Do you know why he doesn't say action? There's a reason for it. He said because action induces stress. So everybody gets used to lights, camera, action, and he don't want anybody to tense up. So he just says, okay. And a friend of mine that was in American Sniper, he played Bradley Cooper's dad. They were in that kitchen scene. This was the first scene that he was being directed by Clint Eastwood. So it's a very tight shot, close shot, and nobody had told him that. And so they got all ready, and then because he was the first line, and Clint said, okay. And he didn't know what to do, and he just said, okay. And then so finally Clint said, I don't say action. And my guy said, look, can I take a minute? Because that might have been the coolest experience of my life. And I need a minute before we restart, because so that,
I need to just say
let's just take a minute and let me absorb that Clint Eastwood is that cool.
I love that. Yeah. What a fun thing. So let me ask you this: as far as
and of course Cameron Watson is
yes, Cameron Watson is a wonderful role model. Yes, yes, who is our connection. I love that she's our connection. I do love her. I mean, it's no wonder that Vivian is such a cool kid. But yeah, speaking of Cameron, so we are going to be having on August 5th, we're going to be having a parent seminar. And a virtual parent seminar for everybody out there. If anybody's listening, you're going to get to meet Cameron Watson. I'm sure she's loving the fact that I'm telling everyone.
She was waiting for that. So.
Oh yeah, there you go. So we're going to have Cameron and then her daughter Vivian Watson, who's on the new hit show, The Babysitters Club. Which I do have to tell you. Well, first of all, my wife will love that I'm admitting this. I got emotional watching The Babysitters Club, which is sort of ridiculous. But this show, I feel like, when you talk about content, a great thing about that show is the fact that it deals with a lot of different topics that I think are important to deal with. It is done in a way that is totally family friendly, which it would be nice to have some shows where when I watch them, I can actually watch it before I go to sleep without worrying about everything in life or like my well-being. But I do love that about the Babysitters Club. So it's going to be really cool for the free parent seminar we're going to be doing, and similar to this. In regards to that, with content, for you, what are some things that maybe you would like to see come out of Kane Studio in regards to content? Just, not specifically, but what do you think's missing right now? What are some of the things that we could really, in the state of Georgia, maybe be more proactive with in regards to creation?
I think so. People ask me all the time. I mean, I get this question a lot, and when Hollywood, the city is a pretty small town, right? And so all these people are between Century City and the Valley. That's kind of where they live, screenwriters and everything else. And so they're just around each other. They see the same billboards, they see the same influences. And that's why you see so much of the same, you feel like you see the same thing over and over again. It's just because they see it all the time. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like they're trying to outdo each other on sometimes just contrived plot lines that they're trying to make. Like you said, they're trying to go this way to make a point. That's why I love Taylor Sheridan as a writer, because I mean his stuff like Hell or High Water or I can't remember the other one. And he does Yellowstone. Mm-hmm. I mean, he just writes straight stories, right? I mean, and so I think there's a lot of people that just have never been out of LA and have never met people in Southwest Georgia or, in Marietta or North Georgia or East Tennessee, which is the majority of the country. I mean, a majority of the country does not live in LA, New York, DC, and, those three cities. And so what I'm looking for is number one, I try to keep it in that PG-13 lane for a financial reason, because your audience is 40% bigger. In fact, I pulled a plug on a movie because it was in the contract that it was going to be PG-13, and I funded the first thing, and not only were they the only budget, when I saw the final script, it had more F-bombs than a Quentin Tarantino movie, and I was like, they just thought I was dumb money. And so I look at the classic movies of the 20s, 30s, 40s, well, maybe 30s, 40s, and 50s, and see if there is a modern take on those. I love movies like Hidden Figures, that just tells a straight story about inspirational people. Yeah. So I mean, because I grew up in Georgia, and that's my experience was growing up in Powder Springs and now living in Southwest Georgia, and I've had the experience to lap the country a couple of times. I've been all over. There's just a different kind of vibe, and I've been on a number of kind of film festivals. I'm on these like kind of pitch panels, which is kind of like Shark Tank, where screenwriters get to pitch their play. We're not buying them, we're just giving them notes. And the first time, anytime they say it's set in the South, the first thing I ask is, are there any hoop skirts in it? And because everything set in the South has a hoop skirt in it, and I've never seen a daggum hoop skirt in my life. So, I don't know if that was there was an answer in that ramble, but
no, you know what?
I look for stories that would. I'm thinking about my customer, which is the audience. Who is buying that ticket? Who is taking the time to watch it? And I think movie theaters are going to come back, because I think that movies are intended to watch communally, and I'll prove that because drive-in theaters are popping up. Like if people didn't like, and then outside of major cities, going to the movie theater is the only thing you do, and so and it's still the lowest for cost entertainment. It's not like going to a Braves game or whatever. It's at a price point that most Americans can afford. Even in the Depression, there were three things that people bought: liquor, lipstick, and movie tickets.
And I feel like liquor and lipstick are on their way out. So now we've got it all.
I want to be a good steward of that person who just spent $40 to bring his entire family into a movie theater and watch a story, and tell an honest story, not a contrived kind of, try to artificially put some sort of message that doesn't need there. Because I'll tell you a good example, and it's a documentary. The Factory that the Obamas produced for Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
Watch that documentary, because it is a documentary that simply tells a story without taking anybody's side. It just it gives such an honest perception of everybody involved in that thing, but it does not force upon you a perspective. It lets the audience decide what where they come down on it. And you're talking about an American company being bought by a Chinese company. It's an incredible documentary from the filmmaking point of view, as well as a sort of story.
I love that, and I love that you bring it all back to story. I mean, I think at the end of the day, we're doing the best we can to tell the stories out there, and what an interesting concept too that I had not thought a lot about. This entire time, Patrick, I really appreciate all your perspectives, but in particular, this concept of all of these sort of untold stories from the perspectives of people outside of the bubbles where these stories have been written. So not only are you going to have new stories, but you're going to have very new content, new ideas, new everything. And I love that concept too. And I think the world is in need of it. I mean, it's right. I mean, don't you feel that way? Like, we need these types of stories that aren't like meant to just shake you up. I mean, we see it enough out there, but stories that just tell a story about humanity and who we are as human beings.
And look, we've lost it with the news. I mean, you can't, I've stopped watching the news because whatever channel you're watching, you're getting your beat about the head and shoulders about a certain perspective, right?
I'm 100% with you on that.
Nobody is just giving you the facts, right? And I think that people just get tired of that. And when they're spending their entertainment dollar, they want to be inspired, they want to laugh, they want to be scared, they want to be they want to be entertained in whatever fashion whatever genre you pick. And I think the best way to do that is just and be bold. I mean, look at Get Out. When you turn a genre on your head, I mean, be bold, because it's so funny. And this is when I said, don't take no for an answer, is that all these people will be naysayers, and they'll keep telling you have no idea how many people have called me crazy, thought I was crazy. Of course, that probably started in high school with Cameron, but I'm talking about normally here. I mean, in the last few years, you're crazy, this is never going to happen. And the closer I get now, it's like, but even in storytelling or acting or whatever, when you're bold and it works, all of a sudden you go from crazy to genius in 2.8 seconds, right? And so, and that takes courage. So, that's, again, that's I mean, I guess that applies to life, but it really does apply to this industry, because there's a lot of people that just don't want anybody else to succeed because they feel like it's going to impact them, when I see it as truly, I'm not worried about my slice, let's just make a bigger pie.
I love that. Patrick, man, what a pleasure to talk to you. I really mean that from the bottom of my heart. You are it's inspiring for me personally, and just as a business owner who has gone through some obviously challenging times and felt sometimes like we're for lack of a better word, failing or coming up short. It's really, you are inspirational. And what you said right there, I think is such a wonderful way to close out, in that this is something that I was thinking about, where And I was in fact talking to students today about this, how it's a stupid, ridiculous, far-fetched idea right up until the point where it's brilliant, innovative, and makes perfect sense. And so, you know, I think that's such a great way to look at it, that, you know, being bold and making these choices in a way where you're willing to stand by it. It's great. And I really hope that, that people take something from this, bigger than just learning about the industry, but it's about human beings. It's about storytelling, and it's a treat. It was a treat to talk to you. How can people find out more? So as far as Kane Studio, what's the next thing that people can look for?
So go to Kane Studio, no S, because we're only one. I made that. Go canestudio.com. Teaser video, and really the company that did it really captured kind of the heart of what we're doing. You can click around there. We've done a location gallery and some things like that. And as to our construction, I got to be honest with you, I've slowed things down. Still talking to companies for long-term leases, but I'll be honest with you, I'm waiting for everybody else to make all the mistakes and then just learn from them, since you know, I don't want to spend $12 million on an HVAC system that a hospital needs unless I need to. So you know, our next step is I've got the team. I've got a couple of places I've got to fill the team, but you know, we're still we've got our investor hanging in there and all of that. And so keeping everybody together when because I like to hustle, you know, and so keeping everybody excited and fresh when the right strategy is to just sit back and wait. It's not really part of my character, but it is the right thing to do.
Well, that's great, Patrick, and I'm excited. And I know one of the questions from one of our clients was, will Catapult be teaching classes at the Education Center? And I would like to let you know that we are happy to do that. But I will put that.
You got it. We'll find you a spot and not charge you any rent. I think I can work that out.
Well, thank you, Patrick. Thank you so much for your time. I look forward to eventually meeting you in person. And
wow.
I have not a doubt in my mind that Kane Studio is going to be the catalyst for so many wonderful things. And thank you for doing what you do. Well,
from your lips to God's ears, I appreciate it. I hope I didn't bore anybody.
But not by the littlest amount. Thank you. It was great. Thank you, Patrick.
All right,
Patrick. Have a good one. Bye, guys.
Okay.